everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Binky back today to review something from Viseart. This is the Tryst Palette. Yes, I am slowly making my way through the Ulta and Sephora sale items that I bought last month, and I'm slowly getting it done. And actually, this is one of them that I jumped into really quickly because I've heard so many great things about Viseart, so many great things, and how people are like, these are the best. They're so great, but I didn't want to drop. I think it's around $80 a palette, and there was no way I was going to do that. So they released a smaller palette, this one, which you can see right here. There's a lot of powder. I've been using it. A 9-pan one, cool tone. It's still kind of riding that cool tone orange-red phase that we were going through, except for this pop of purple here. So yeah, we're kind of moving away from that. And yes, it did just fall out of the pan. The first time I opened this, the pan started falling out. Now I think this is $46. I'll put it to the side, but even with the 15% discount, this should never be happening. And guess what? The pans popped right out. I'm gonna retrieve that. So yes, I guess I won't be moving that too much. We'll keep it at this angle. But, you know, it's not mind-blowing. This isn't like a woo palette. We haven't seen this before. We sure have. But, yeah, this time I've never used these. And so I've heard really great things about wear time and things. And to be honest with you, it was a really disappointing palette. I'm not going to lie. I just was not really impressed by this. I tried to make it work for 2 weeks off and on between using different things. And I just found it to be really, really difficult to use. And so what I'm going to do, as you can see, I'm not wearing any eye makeup. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put this on and kind of walk through it. Now, just to kind of prep the eye, I'm going to go in with the orange here. Now, what I found is that these are extremely powdery, and you can kind of see it just even dipping into it. Really powdery. So I just want to kind of coat the eye. And what you will see is there's not a lot showing up here. There's just not a lot of pigment to start out with. And this is what this looks like. I'm just going to clean this up a little bit, but here we go. I mean, I don't expect it to be earth-shattering. There it is. But what I'm finding is that these are really powdery, and so they just kind of whisk away really easily when you prep the eye, which is fine. I just want to point out, just even dipping into it, I cleaned it. Look how powdery that is. Yeah. So, and then what I want to do is add a little bit of color in the crease. And so I dip in here lightly. I find if you dip in there lightly and work with it, it works a lot better. But I don't know. It looks brighter in the pan than it does when you actually use it. I'm trying not to blind anyone with the mirror, but yeah, it's really powdery. It's just really, really powdery, but whatever. So I'm going to lightly put this in the crease. And there it goes. It does definitely go in, but what I don't really understand is it's such a bright color. It's this one right here. Sorry, I don't want to blind anyone. And then it goes on all right, but the more you use it, the more it tends to go away because these are so powdery. And the pigment's all right. I guess my issue is just even looking at the brush, if I go like this and I try to put it in the crease, it disappears. It completely, not completely, but it almost completely disappears. Now what's on there is because I did a swatch, and so it's going to adhere better than if you're just using a brush. But even still, it's already kind of wearing away. So not my favorite formula. So now what I'm going to go in with is this one right here. It's not the one that popped out. Oh yeah, it is the one that popped out. It's ready to come back out now. Fantastic. And put this one in there. And it goes on in there better than the other one did. This brush isn't really great for this. Switch that. This is more of a crease brush, like a cut crease brush. I don't know what I was thinking with that. But I kind of do my own thing with brushes. Yeah. I think most of us do. Not a makeup artist, just your normal person trying the stuff on. But so it goes in all right, actually. Again, it's really powdery, but I just feel like, and I'm dipping in it quite a bit, because if you do it too much, it starts breaking away the shadow. So it's just easier to go in there lightly. And even still, it's not doing a lot of color. You know, I went in there pretty nicely. I mean, I could dig in there more, but now it's just putting powder everywhere. It's just very powdery formula. Okay, so now I want to go in with one of the shimmer shades. So I'm going to go with this lightest one here. And this was my issue mostly with the palette, is I had to dig my fingers in there at least. I did like 10 circles just to get this much onto my finger. I felt like, for me, it was impossible to put on with the brush. So you really do have to go in with your fingers to get it on there. And part of it's because it's so powdery. If you use the brush, it just kind of floats away. But the pigment isn't that crazy on it. So then I'm like, okay, let's go in with the one next to it, which is right here. And it's kind of hard because this is going to pop out, so I'll put it to the side. But maybe this one will fare better. And it doesn't. Again, part of it is it kind of matches my skin tone, but it doesn't really leave a lot on the eye. It just doesn't at all. So I'm just having a really hard time with it. And the more you work it, the more it disappears. So that was kind of frustrating. So then I go in with the final shimmer here, thinking maybe this one will work. And that one shows up a little bit better. It's this beautiful bronze color. And it fares better. You know, out of all of them, it does fare better, but it's just, the pigmentation's really not that great. I have a wipey here in case you're wondering. And I'm going to go back in with the lighter, combination of the lighter colors. It just isn't really working well for me. And I'm wondering if maybe I'm doing something wrong, because I primed my eyes and things, but yeah. So I want to add in a little bit more dimension. So I'm going to go in with this dark chocolate brown and use that. So that's what I'll be using for the outer V and in the corner there, just to lightly tap it in there, just because it's looking kind of okay. So what I'm going to do, even though these are really powdery, which they are, there isn't too much cleanup that needs to be done. A little bit, I need to blend it out a little bit, but it hasn't really dropped below the eye line too much, just a little bit that needs a little bit of fixing. But for the most part, I find that these actually, even though they're extremely powdery, and I cleaned this off before using it, and look how there's just residue everywhere. I still feel though that they're not too messy, and part of it is that they're not overly pigmented, except for this guy right here. So what I'm going to do is finish up the rest of my look and come back and finish the review. Okay, so this is the final look that I came up with the Viseart Tryst Palette here. So you can see it's nothing groundbreaking. You know, these colors just lead to this type of a look. It's not going to be anything groundbreaking. You probably have 5 billion other palettes that look exactly like this. And I'm going to say it, they probably cost a lot less and probably perform the same as or better than this palette. And here's the thing, I just really found it to be extremely frustrating using this. And I read some of the reviews, and some people are like, oh, you have to know how to use them. And I think it's for the bigger palettes. So what I do want to separate is the bigger palettes may be different than the smaller palettes, but for me, the quality should be the same across the board. So I don't know if that's an excuse or not. I'm getting to the point with companies where, but it's the smaller palette, like it's an excuse, or it's the holiday release. And I'm like, that's not an excuse. If you're still charging the same price, I expect the same kind of quality. And I really have nothing to go off of with this because I've never really used it before. And do I think it's horrible? No, I don't. I think it's mediocre. And when I'm paying that much for these pans, and I think their big palettes go for like $80 or something, if I'm spending that much, I'm going to have higher expectations than, let's say, I'm going to buy Maybelline at the corner drugstore, you know? I mean, it's just the reality of the situation. And I just really feel like I have so many other palettes that are cheaper than this, and or about the same price and have more, and they work better. So I just wasn't really that impressed, and I don't know if it's because, again, it's the smaller one, but that's not an excuse, you know? it ends up working. You know, I created a nice look. I don't really feel like I had that many different options. You know, you get 2 or 3 different looks out of this palette. It's nothing extraordinary. It's a very great palette for everyday looks, which I think a lot of people will appreciate. And you can use this dark color here, which is going to be a saving grace. This thing is the one that works the best out of the palette, and it really does work well. I think out of all of them, this one is the best, this dark chocolate brown. And so that's going to help you really finish the look. But again, with all of them, including that one, the more you use it, the more it starts to disappear. So you kind of want to dip it in there and go in there lightly and just not mess with it too much, because the more you mess with it, the more it kind of fades away. It blends decently. Again, it just tends to fade away, but it doesn't blend into one color when you use it. You can definitely see the different colors being represented there, so that is not an issue. These are extremely powdery, extremely powdery. I cleaned this off, and again, it's already just covered with the shadow. The packaging is okay, you know, it's nice. It's most definitely plastic, you know. My issue with the quality control is that a couple of these already started to pop out. The first time I opened it, if you watch my haul video, when I opened this up, I think 2 of them popped out, which just isn't really excusable for a palette, no matter how much you're paying for it, but especially at this price point. That shouldn't be happening, so I was a little bit curious as to why. I just, you know, the wear time was decent. You know, it lasted on me, I would say, a good 7-8 hours, which is pretty good with somebody who has really oily eyes like myself. That's not bad. You know, it stayed matte and quite nice for a while. They go on really easily, you know, so it just depends what you're looking for. If you're looking for a lot of pigment and a lot of color, this may not be for you. The pigment really was not what I was expecting, and you're going to have to work for it a little. But then once you do, you're going to get what you want, but it's just going to take a little bit of work. So, you know, there's pros and cons to it. For me, it's kind of a miss, just because I had really high expectations. I think when you go into something like this with high, like you can hear it bouncing around. Yeah, those are the 2 that fall out. So it's like a maraca now. But I had high expectations going into this, really high expectations. So I think using it, I just was very disappointed. And I don't know if I would buy this again. Well, definitely not this one. In fact, you know, I don't even know if I'm going to keep this one, just because the expectations were high, and it just didn't deliver, and the fact that it's already falling apart, and it's really not doing much for me. So unfortunately, I hate returning stuff, because Sephora just chucks these things, and it's such a waste. But it's also such a waste of like $45 that I also don't want to do that, especially because I'm on a low buy, and it's just, I don't really want to do that. So I try not to return more than 2 or 3 items a year, and I buy quite a lot, but I really try not to, because it's a waste. But I just really can't justify this when I have so many other palettes that are this exact shade range that work a lot better. So this just isn't going to work in my collection, but you may love it. So let me know what you think if you pick this up, because I'm curious, is this the same quality as the big palettes? Because it's kind of turned me off from getting the bigger palettes. And how did you make it work? I've heard sometimes there's a learning curve, and other people are like, there shouldn't have to be a learning curve. I'm just curious to hear what you think about it. Let me know. So until next time, have a fabulous day, my friends. Bye.